Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. This is our third day of our Truth Team. I'm going to spend some time, first of all, talking about what is happening at our border and some of the comments coming from the Border Patrol themselves, some of the commentary from people watching this, and also just trying to say, is it possible to fix some of the problems we have at the border? And it is, if we had a willing Congress and a willing Speaker of the House to go along, which will, of course, not happen. So that, again, illustrates a variety of different issues we'll put on the table for the first segment. Then we're going to be talking with our good friend Jonathan Saenz of Texas Values. There is a particular piece of legislation that is making its way through first the Texas Senate and then the Texas House. It's called the Texas Professional Protection Act. And this is something that relates to everything from wedding vendors and cake decorators, but also might be even helpful in the controversy we've been talking about with Chick-fil-A. So we'll get into some of that with him. And then, of course, as we get into the next hour, especially our national hour, we will also have Nick Pitts with us as well, and we'll be looking at some of the millennial issues. Matter of fact, we've posted one of the articles I'll be talking about here about the border crisis, but then two other ones I've posted. Millennials like socialism until they get jobs. That's from the Washington Post. Pretty good piece. If you like socialism, you'll love the VA, and a variety of other articles I'll be quoting that we have not posted. And so there's lots to cover here, but let's, if we can, first of all, come back to one of the first concerns that you should have if you've been watching what is happening at our border, and that is the almost unwillingness on the part of some of the leaders that are Democrats in Congress, in particular the House of Representatives, and almost the unwillingness of individuals who are in the media to tell us what's really going on. So the first thing I want to quote from is actually from Brandon Judd. He is the president of the National Border Patrol Council. And he was talking about this influx of migrants currently flooding over our southern border, and says that represents the worst crisis that they have confronted since the agency was formed in 1924. Now, you can agree or disagree with that statement, but here is an individual that spent 21 years as a Border Patrol agent. So he has a little bit of history, more than 2 decades worth of experience, not to mention seeing everything as well. He says, I've never seen it like this. I've worked in the busiest locations in the history of Border Patrol. I've never seen anything like this before. But again, you might say, well, that's just anecdotal information. Well, it is, but it's relevant because it comes from somebody who certainly understands the issue. But let's go to the Department of Homeland Security, which announced that there were 100,000 apprehensions at the southern border in March. And to put that in perspective, there were 76,000 in February. Both of those months were the highest in 10 years. So you have to go back at least 10 years to get something even comparable to what is happening there. And recognize, if I might, just for a minute, apprehensions don't necessarily illustrate everything, because we know for every person that is apprehended, there are all sorts of other people that get through. So it's not the best sampling way to understand what is happening, but it's the best that we have, and it shows that that has increased rather dramatically. The other issue, which I want to come back to in just a minute, which was also raised by Brandon Judd, who, again, worked with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol for more than 2 decades, and now, of course, is the president of the National Border Patrol Group, is that the composition of the migrants is very different. Now they're overwhelmingly family units, and yet the facilities that we have in these areas of entry were really primarily designed for single male population, which makes sense. That's exactly who primarily was coming here illegally back in the 1990s and even in the early 2000s. And so as a result, that's created a different set of circumstances, because do you want young kids to be put in with other men in the prison? I think you know the answer to that one. And that, of course, illustrates one other issue we'll get to in just a minute. Again, Gary Bauer puts it this way: American sovereignty is under siege at the southern border. He goes on to talk about the fact that even Jay Johnson, who was the Homeland Security Secretary for President Obama, acknowledged that we have a crisis. During an interview, he said, by any measure, 4,000 apprehensions in our southern border in one day is a crisis. 100,000 in a month is definitely a crisis. So, again, even people that have been part of the Obama administration acknowledge that as well. And so you are seeing kind of this surge of situation. And Kristen Nielsen, who is now the Secretary of Homeland Security, has been working on that particular issue as well. But that all brings me, in just the 3 minutes we have before our next break, to the piece by Rich Lowry, in which he says, when historians look back into this era, they will wonder why we insisted on outsourcing our border control to a foreign country. What he's talking about, the fact is that, of course, we've seen these apprehensions going up from 76,000 to 100,000. And the bottom line is Donald Trump has been primarily dependent upon Mexico and, in a sense, holding Mexico accountable for dealing with that issue. And as important as that is, there's only so much that Mexico can do. And, of course, the big issue I just alluded to a minute ago is our border facilities were really designed to hold single men back when it was mostly adult males coming from Mexico. Now we have whole family units coming from Central America. So he comes to this conclusion, which is kind of the subtitle of his piece. It's not that border control has been tried and failed. It hasn't been tried. He says, thanks to court decrees and congressional enactments, we don't permit ourselves to quickly return minors from Central American countries or to detain them for any significant period of time. They get released along with the adults accompanying them. And so, of course, we have this ongoing problem of catch and release. So then Rich Lowry points out this, and we'll get to this maybe a little bit later in our broadcast on the National Hour. Congress could fix all of this in an afternoon with a few key changes in the law. Trump has a Nancy Pelosi problem, much more than he has an Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador problem, who's known as AMLO. We've got AOC, so might as well AMLO. But anyway, since Nancy Pelosi is unmovable, Donald Trump has to try to work the Mexican government, and that, of course, has been somewhat difficult. He does point out that Mexico, he says, has done more to play ball with the United States under Trump than most people would have thought possible. Recognize that Obrador is not exactly a fan of Donald Trump, not even a fan really of the free market, but that's another story for another day. But still, Mexico doesn't make controlling these migrants a high priority because they will end up here or not there. But nevertheless, at least it has been something that has been happening. But as I think Rich Lowry aptly points out, when we look back on this particular period in our history, there will be kind of a puzzled look on the part, I think, of many historians as to why we ask Mexico to do border control instead of our own border control. And a lot of that really simply has to do not with the president of Mexico. It has so much to do with the Speaker of the House in the democratically controlled House right now of Representatives, where changes could be made pretty quickly, and that would make a very significant difference on how we actually meet people at the border. Let's take a break, though. We're going to spend some time talking with Jonathan Saenz about some of this new legislation that you need to know about. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Heartbeat bills have been introduced in numerous state legislatures. Some have held up in committee, but others make it to a floor vote. Some even pass the legislature and may even be signed by the governor. In previous years, even those that survive are certain to be struck down by federal judges. But the political and judicial landscape may be changing. That is why David French argues that it is time for Republican legislatures to throw down the gauntlet and start passing heartbeat bills that would directly challenge Roe v. Wade. He argues that the time for incrementalism is over. Most bills passed by state legislatures have focused on the margin, banning third trimester abortions, establishing a waiting period, and mandating parental consent. He believes that incrementalism had its day, but now argues that it is time for bold action. He rightly fears that incrementalism now will merely encourage judicial caution. If your goal is to have the Supreme Court overrule Roe v. Wade, why do that if most of the bills merely nibble at the margins? You don't need to overrule this Supreme Court precedent when the latest state legislative bill on abortion merely requires an abortion doctor have admitting privileges at a local hospital. That brings us back to his broader point. He says there's a change in the cultural winds. We're on the cusp of a cultural moment. Passing bills that directly challenge the 1973 Supreme Court decision represent a statement of moral intent. The focus should no longer be on what he calls the less death approach of incrementalism, but should be replaced by bills that protect the unborn. The High Court will be forced to take note because we have some states, like New York, passing legislation expanding the right to late-term abortions, while other states pass legislation protecting the unborn. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360, James Robison.
I love the fact that you are addressing the issues that actually matter and probably matter more than people have realized, and I think people are in shock right now by the fact that we didn't take these precious things that we have in liberty and freedom and the opportunity that the blessings of God have afforded us. We have not been responsible in preserving them, and we appear to be very close to losing them. And the fact that you all are committed to delivering truth that sets us free and keeps us free, I want to thank you. I thank Point of View. I thank every person who supports the incredible radio broadcast, and I hope they will continue. They will even enlarge their support, and others will join in. Thank you, Kerby, for not only your gift and your talent, but your commitment to the will and the kingdom purpose of God. God bless you, and God bless Point of View.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Kind words for James Robison. We're in the third day of our Truth Team, and oftentimes we don't have a chance to do our normal broadcasting, but they had some opening here, and so I wanted to bring back an individual that we have had on almost every week, Jonathan Saenz, who's the president of Texas Values, individual that in the past, of course, was with the Liberty Institute, now called First Liberty, joins us from time to time from Austin, and Jonathan, always great to have you on the program with us.
Well, it's great to be on with you, Kerby, and I just want all your listeners to know how much we appreciate your ministry, your radio program, and what a tremendous investment it is for the people of Texas and our country.
Well, maybe a little bit later we'll talk about why individuals should support us, but let's, if we can, focus on what is called the Texas Professional Protection Act. And it's interesting, Jonathan, because, we oftentimes say what happens in Texas ends up elsewhere. A couple of weeks ago, we started out by talking about Chick-fil-A in San Antonio. That's become kind of a national issue. And then, of course, there's also an attempt to ban Chick-fil-A in Buffalo, New York. I see Rachel Alexander for the Stream, who has been on the program with us many times before, and she's actually outside of the state of Texas, but nevertheless wrote a very good piece on Texas bills would protect religious freedom from LGBTQ bullying. So this is really getting some traction even outside the state of Texas. But give us an update here, because indeed we see SB 17, the Professionals Protection Act, moving through the legislature. Tell us again a little bit more about what it is and what our listeners can do to help you out in that regard.
Sure. Well, Senate Bill 17 is a very common sense religious freedom law that just makes it clear. It clarifies and ensures that in state law that people that have sincerely held religious beliefs but are required by the government to get a license or some type of certificate to do the work that they do privately, that the government can't withhold that license or try to punish them in any way regarding that license or certificate because someone finds out about their religious beliefs that someone may disagree with. And so we've seen this in the context of lawyers that have to get a license from the state, get a law license, Christian counselors. This even could apply to teachers. Teachers have to get a certificate. Under state law, a certificate is included in the definition of a license. Doctors, pharmacists, nurses. As a matter of fact, we don't know the real number of how many people are required to get a certificate, a license, or the government, state even calls it an authorization in order to do certain areas of work. And so we want to make it clear that whatever profession that you're in, if someone finds out, maybe someone finds out that you went to Chick-fil-A. I mean, I'm being a little facetious here, but, look at what we're dealing with these days. Where if people find out that you support marriage between a man and a woman, or you have sincerely held religious beliefs, or you go to some particular church, that they want to ruin your life. They want to make it difficult for you to make a living. And so we want to make it clear, though, that our state government is not going to allow for that. And it's not uncommon. We saw this with the Pastor Protection Act. We saw this with the Freedom to Serve Children Act. It's oftentimes necessary to make it clear in state law in specific areas that religious freedom protection does apply, and there are limitations to what the government can do, and they should not be punishing you or forcing you to choose between your work and your faith. And Senate Bill 17 ensures that. It simply gives you a defense if someone tries to use the government to punish you because of your belief. And the bill wasn't talked about a whole lot. It seemed to be common sense, and then all of a sudden a lot of folks that don't agree with religious freedom started opposing it, but it already had a lot of support. The Senate passed this week, yesterday as a matter of fact. It passed out of committee last week, and we expect it's going to get support in the House as well. So far in the Senate, the support has been bipartisan.
Again, one of the things I might point out is that there are some groups like Google and Amazon and others going against it, but it's kind of the flip side of what we spent some time a month ago talking about, the hashtag free to believe, kind of the ban the bill kind of legislation. This is sometimes people say, well, we want to defeat bad bills. We also want to pass good bills, and this is a good bill. And again, I would challenge our listeners to go to txvalues.org, or they don't even have to remember that because we have the link on our website. As long as you remember Point of View, you'll find it. And to begin to see how to begin to, first of all, oppose the hashtag ban the Bible bills, and to talk about the hashtag free to believe, but then to scroll down a little bit and find the action items for supporting religious freedom for Texas professionals. So, again, even though it passed the committee, you do need a floor vote, you need a House vote, and a couple of other things. So this is a good time to mobilize our listeners for action, right?
That's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, we've had over 4,000 messages go through our system on this piece of legislation, Senate Bill 17. And it's important because, it's an overall climate, though, that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of efforts by some people that they want to water down or to create doubt or question about people's religious beliefs and about how the government can take action against those. And they want people to think that they've got to think twice. They've got to check their faith at the door, however you want to describe it. And unfortunately, that's leading to some people that feel very committed to their Christian faith to feel like there are certain professions and there are certain fields of work that maybe they shouldn't go into. And, you know, we have a climate in academia now these days where people, I mean, and it's not just about some of these issues about counseling and lawyers. You could also see a situation where someone is in the medical profession and someone is trying to force them to perform an abortion or something of that nature, and they simply don't want to be engaged in that type of activity or procedure, and someone tries to force them to do that. I mean, we've seen these things happen in religious-based hospitals, and they don't want the government to tell them what to do or to punish them on these type of issues. And so, but unless it's stated specifically in law that that's how these things should play out, if someone challenges your religious beliefs, people will suggest that you don't have that type of religious freedom. And that was what was suggested on the Senate floor yesterday.
Yes.
Royce West made a comment, and it certainly sounded like he was saying, well, if you're so committed to your religious beliefs, maybe you shouldn't get involved in work in some of these fields. Maybe, you know, if you've got to apply for a license for the state, and there was a reference to, what Caesar, the story from the Bible with Jesus on this issue, that if you've got to apply for a license to Caesar and you're concerned that someone might not like your religious beliefs in that field, then maybe you shouldn't get involved in that field. And so I don't think that's what we want to be doing in our state. We want to encourage people of all faiths to know that they are welcome to participate in a field of work that they feel called to, and not that they've got to choose between their work and their faith.
Again, SB 17. When we come back from the break, I've got a piece that I wrote 5 years ago on careers to avoid, and I put it in question mark because of that very issue we're talking about. But just before we let you go, Jonathan, I thought we might, for just a minute, have you talk to our listeners, since we are in the midst of raising funds this week for Point of View and Truth Team. What would you say to individuals that might consider joining with us on the Truth Team?
Well, look, we're a nonprofit organization as well, so we understand how important it is for people to make an investment in work, in ministries like Point of View. And I describe it as an investment because it truly is. I mean, even though it's a lot of times about funds that are needed now in order to stay on the radio, to continue to have working equipment, to have staff, to get a message out that's very important and strong, and a lot of times is being censored in other mediums. And so it's really a freedom issue, but it's an investment because we're planting seeds for the future as well as working on issues now that you're communicating. And this is truth. I mean, this is God's word. It doesn't get more important than that, in making sure that other people can hear the information and maybe otherwise they wouldn't have access to it or it wouldn't reach them. And so I'm tremendously grateful. I mean, look, I can only be in one place at one time. And so in order for us to get the message of the work that we do, the Point of View Radio allows us to be in a different place, if you will, through your radio station and be in probably thousands, if not millions of homes throughout the country.
Thank you so very much. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.
Surveys show that millennials allegedly support socialism, to which Robert Knight says,
"You guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. You're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want."
Many today have been taught a totally false view of what socialism really is. They see promises of free stuff, but never stop to think, it's never worked anywhere else. Why would it work here? America needs voices who will tell millennials and everyone else the truth. America needs you to join Point of View Radio's Truth Team. And for this special week, which is running by us quickly, your gift will be doubled. We have a $5,000 match today. Every dollar you invest before midnight tonight becomes $2. You can do the math. 20 becomes 40, 50 becomes 100. Don't put it off. Visit online or call right now and help turn the tide against this dangerous ignorance. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Double your impact by midnight tonight. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
You know, on this Wednesday, we often do a Millennial Roundtable, and Nick Pitts will be joining us at the top of the hour, I suspect. He is leaving from an event that he has to be a part of, but hopefully we'll see him soon. But while we are talking about something that we just heard from Jonathan Saenz, I thought we'd focus on that a little bit longer, because this is Senate Bill 17, and that is the Senate version of the Professional Protection Act. And, of course, there is also a companion bill in the Texas House, which is HB 2827. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about that is, number one, because we are fortunate this hour from 12 to 1 to have primarily a Texas audience. Now, I'm not ignoring those of you in Minnesota and some of you that listen in online, but the majority of our audience is Texas, and that has given me a chance, first of all, to talk about some of the things happening in the Texas legislature. And Texas is not Las Vegas. You've heard it said before. What happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. Nope. What happens in Texas usually goes all the way around the nation. We, the other day, talked about Chick-fil-A not being able to have a restaurant in the San Antonio airport. Well, that became a national story. And now, of course, it's very national because you had now the same thing happen in Buffalo, New York, at that airport. I think that's going to get resolved in the future, but we'll find out. We certainly can talk about the Attorney General of the state of Texas, Ken Paxton, who decided to bring a lawsuit on the Affordable Care Act based upon, I think, a very important flaw that we've talked about before, and that is that the Congress, when it passed the Tax Cut and Control Act, actually zeroed out the penalty for the mandate. And so the argument is if the mandate is no longer in effect, really the law should not be in effect. And of course, then now he's been joined by about 20 other attorneys generals around the country. And the point I'm making is sometimes what happens in Texas goes to the nation. So whether you're a Texan listening to this broadcast or someone else, you have at stake this particular piece of legislation called the Texas Professional Protection Act, which basically ensures that the state of Texas does not punish an individual who must obtain a license because they might have their license revoked because of their religious beliefs. This actually amends the Texas Occupations Code to prohibit occupational licensing boards from adopting any rule, regulation, policy, or penalty that actually limits a person's freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association. You would think we wouldn't need something like that, but then if you thought that, you would be wrong. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, 5 years ago, this was May of 2014, that's almost 5 years ago, I wrote a piece which was entitled Careers to Avoid. You can go on the website and get the Viewpoints commentary if you want. But I said, is it possible that where we were starting to see all these different lawsuits being brought and individuals being fined, that maybe we didn't turn this thing around, could find that there would be all sorts of professions or jobs that Christians might not be able to take. Photography. Used to be photography was a career that Christians could pursue, but after hearing about a Christian photographer in New Mexico was fined for declining to photograph a lesbian commitment ceremony, even before marriage, same-sex marriage was legalized, what about that? What about a baker? Well, we've already seen Jack Phillips go to the Supreme Court, but we still have our Christian bakers in Oregon. Aaron and Melissa Klein faced both civil and criminal penalties, including jail time. They were told they couldn't even talk about this issue, and their business ultimately failed. How about a florist? Well, the Attorney General in the state of Washington sued and is still suing the Christian florist there because she wasn't going to prepare an arrangement for a gay wedding ceremony. You might say, well, okay, maybe I'll go into the field of hospitality. How about the Wildflower Inn in Vermont that was fined $30,000 and forced to shut down its wedding reception business, or the couple in upstate New York who were fined because they wouldn't use their home. They live in this, and they weren't willing to use their home for something that they disagreed with. How about counseling? Well, one student was dismissed from a counseling program at Augusta State University for her religious reservations about the homosexual lifestyle. Well, maybe you want to be a teacher. Well, one student was kicked out of the doctoral program in education at Roosevelt University for just expressing her belief that homosexuals aren't born gay. And so I wrote this 5 years ago, and in just a few minutes when we have our roundtable discussion, we're going to talk about things you wouldn't have predicted even 10 years ago. Well, here's a commentary from 5 years ago, which illustrates exactly why a piece of legislation like this makes so much sense. And Rachel Alexander, writing in the stream, has also picked up on this because she has recognized that what's happening in Texas might be something that could be implemented in her state. And she points out the fact that LGBTQ activists have trampled the religious freedom of believers. They think their interests outweigh the constitutional rights of freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And so far, as she points out, it's worked. And she talks about some of the gay movement's victories in the legal system and all of that. So then she points out that some of the states, recognizing the problem, have begun to, how about bills that would protect Christians and other religious believers from some of the legal and religious bullying that comes from LGBTQ individuals, and then uses as her example, even though this is a national publication, she's using the example here from the state of Texas that the legislature is considering SB 17, which would prohibit licensing agencies from taking, as she says, adverse action against those in regulated professions exercising their religious beliefs, and points out that this would protect lawyers, healthcare professionals, counselors, teachers, real estate agents, barbers, pharmacists, and much more, and just uses this as kind of an example of what has happened, but then points out that at first, and as we heard just a minute ago from Jonathan, it had bipartisan support. Both Republicans and some Democrats in the Texas Senate went along with that in the committee. We'll see where it goes now on the floor vote. But you've had groups like Google, Amazon, IBM, Dell. Some of them have opposed the bill. And, of course, you've had some people say, you know, if you pass a bill like this, it's going to really hurt the economy. Really? Well, again, one of the examples we can use is to go back to North Carolina. And she uses that example as well, in which she said that celebrities and businesses said, well, we're going to cancel bookings in North Carolina. There'll be a loss in jobs. And there was an attempt to actually have an economic boycott or backlash. But the North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest said the economic impact in his state was minimal. Only about 0.1% of the state's annual GDP was affected by this kind of nationwide boycott of North Carolina. So sometimes there's a great deal of claim that we're going to ruin your business, but the reality is a lot less. So anyway, those of you in the state of Texas, I would encourage you to find out where your elected representative, and your senator stand on the Texas Professional Protection Act. That is SB 17, and of course, you'll also be watching HB 2827. And I use this just to kind of come back to one of the things that we are doing this week. We're in the midst of our Truth Team Week. And if you're not familiar, we spend a fair amount of time really trying to educate you about the issues. But every once in a while, we take a little bit of a break from that time of educating you about the key issues and mobilizing you to get involved in a variety of topics. We do that in large part so that, if nothing else, we can remind you that we do actually depend upon your financial gifts to bring this particular ministry to you every single day. And if you have been listening for some time, you recognize that we cover a broad range of issues. Over the next couple hours, just count up all the different topics we will get into, and you'll certainly see that. There is hardly any issue that we ignore, and most importantly, we try to bring a biblical perspective on all of that. So as we're coming to a break here, let me ask a few of you that maybe have been listening to this program for some time. This is kind of our new experimental hour from 12 to 1. And then, of course, we are national from 1 to 3. And that will happen in just a few minutes. And yet, this is a time for those of you in the state of Texas or other listeners to step up and say, you know what, I appreciate what you're doing, and I want to put my vote of approval on what you are providing for us every single day. So let me encourage you, first of all, to go to the website, if you would, pointofview.net. You're going to find some information about some of the things we've already talked about, and click on that banner there that says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger. Click on that button that says Join the Team right now. And the first thing you'll notice is that you can join at as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. There are other levels as well, the Liberty Club and the Century Club. But you'll also see a banner that says we have a $5,000 matching fund. That means if you say, you know, I'd like to give you $10, it becomes $20. If you'd like to give us $100, it becomes $200. And we really need to meet that match. So let me encourage you, first of all, to go to that website, pointofview.net, Or if you'd like to talk to someone, we have people on the phones right now. That pledge line number is 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. The right to differ with popular beliefs and opinions has long been an American principle. Back in the late 1930s, the Gobitis children had a religious objection to saluting the flag. The Supreme Court upheld their expulsion in Minersville School District versus Gobitis, and that's when the harassment of America's Jehovah's Witnesses really took off. Just a few short years later, the Supreme Court revisited its decision in West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. Justice Jackson's majority opinion explained that if the Bill of Rights allows the state to compel one to salute the flag, it also permits public authorities to compel him to utter what is not in his mind. So it is with the First Liberty clients, Aaron and Melissa Klein. Can the state compel small business owners to speak a message contrary to their religious beliefs? That's a question that we hope the Supreme Court might soon answer. And we hope that answer is consistent with Justice Jackson's in Burnett when he wrote, quote, "If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein," unquote. Let's hope the Supreme Court protects America's small business owners and their First Amendment right to differ. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. Let me ask you, what if America's best attorneys from the very top law firms got together to defend religious freedom in court? That's exactly what's happening at First Liberty. And the best news? We're winning over 90% of our legal actions. Come learn more at firstliberty.org. You'll be encouraged. That's firstliberty.org.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
It has been about 25 years since God providentially led me to Point of View when I did not even know it existed. During this time, I have shared numerous taped programs with my family and incorporated the Outlook magazine and other articles into the homeschool curriculum I used in teaching our 5 children. Back 25 years ago, I had to put a big box radio with a recorder strategically in a corner so that I could hear that message. Point of View receives no government funding, for which I am grateful. It is therefore my honor, privilege, and responsibility to support this organization of tremendous self-sacrificing people on a monthly financial basis and to put courage into them through letters and specific prayers as they have become like family to me.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Again, this is the middle of Truth Team. It is the Wednesday, the third day of Truth Team. And so we really need to hear from you. We have some people right now that can answer the phone. So 1-800-347-5151. Of course, we'll be on our national broadcast in just a minute, but I'm just appealing to some of you in the state of Texas.
Yes.
You've heard Jonathan Saenz. You've had a chance to hear some of the other issues we've put on the table here. We've talked a little bit about the crisis at the border, and we're going to be talking about so many more during our Millennial Roundtable. And because it's Millennial Roundtable, first of all, of course, we have Dr. J. Nicholas Pitts here.
Why, hello, Kirby. How are you today?
And coming there from Dallas Baptist University.
Coming from Dallas Baptist University,
EDU.
the Ruth Award Luncheons.
Yes.
And so we were giving honor where honor is due to some ladies here in the Dallas community for just some of their work that they've done as to kind of exhibit and epitomize what Jeremiah would say in Jeremiah 29:7, just to love and seek the welfare of their community and do so in a courageous manner like Ruth. It was a beautiful time, but so grateful to be here with you.
Glad you're here. But again, Dr. Adam Wright, of course, is the president. I highly recommend any student that would want to go to DBU University. And also might recommend anybody who wants to get the daily briefing done by
my
Nick
goodness,
Pitts.
yeah.
And matter of fact, we've posted that today. And of course, we have all through the week Brad Fisk. And Brad, I just appreciate the enthusiasm that Nick Pitts provides, the leadership he provides normally when he's sitting in this chair as we do our Millennial Roundtable.
That's right. And it's a unique thing. Not too many people, surprisingly, are doing this, where they're segmenting the millennials and focusing on what their needs are and what's going on in their life. And I'm a little surprised there's not more of this going on. But of course, as usual, point of view is leading the way yet again, as we do in so many areas of public policy.
Yeah, it's a rich opportunity. One that is, like you said, there's not. I can't think of really any voices that are really filling that need right now. But two, doing it in a distinctive way that holds two things into each other's hand. One being the excellence, and then two being the faithfulness of being able to engage the culture and do so with excellence, but also not forsaking that faithfulness piece. Answering the question, how am I as a Christian to think about this in such a way that's not as bombastic that we continue to see?
That's good.
Yeah, we talked the other day about the culture of contempt, guess what? That is the book by Arthur Brooks, and he's been on the program with us before, and we have plans to have him on again very soon. As a matter of fact, I think we're working with one of the publicists there, and so that will be an opportunity. Those are the kind of ones where if Nick can get away, I like to co-host. We had Jonathan Haidt a while back, and that is in one of our little booklets that you've seen on campus unrest, because we were talking about the coddling of America and some of that. And so, again, there's just a need to communicate truth, but to do it in love, right?
Yeah. One of the things to go off what Jonathan Haidt talks about, I heard something new. I don't know if you'd heard this before, Kirby. We know that we came out of a paradigm in which there was a helicopter parent.
Yes.
And then we thought about lawnmower parents. Well, I never heard this one before. Earlier this week, it was called snowplow parenting. And so, I guess relative to the snowflakes and everything. And so there are these parents that are going before and wanting to make sure that their child doesn't experience any type of difficulty. But I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so thankful for Point of View is, regardless of the parenting style that an individual has, what Point of View does is it tries to help individuals and really does exhibit what Jesus asked us to do relative to come, let us argue one with another, let us dialogue one with another, of understanding both sides, but recognizing the truth. That truth wins out at the end of the day.
And the other thing he talks about in the book, and of course he also did it in the New York Times column, and I covered it a while back, is sometimes when we see the contentiousness that we talk about all the time, there is a tendency sometimes to say, then we shouldn't have any kind of debate. He says, no, it shouldn't that we should debate less. We should debate better.
Yeah.
Because these are issues of fundamental importance, whether it's politics, economics, philosophy, religion. We really need to come to the truth. So we just need to figure out ways to do this in a gracious manner. And that might be another reason why maybe you don't see so many people doing Millennial Roundtable, because we don't have somebody as qualified as Nick Pitts leading this with a gracious spirit, but with just an incredible amount of information.
And I'm just following after, we all know the true hero, the legend right here that is Kerby Anderson. I think that's one of the things, one of the many reasons why I so appreciate what Kerby has done is there's that gentleness, there's that conviction, there's that intelligence when he engages these particular issues. I'm sure many of our listeners are probably very disconcerted with some of the things that they're seeing in the news right now. We think about the rise of socialism specifically. I know individuals have been giving attention to, and one of the things that you'll see a refrain you'll continue to see when you're talking with a millennial or Gen Z about socialism is just there's this stridentness. There's this hardness. And in reality, you can't change a hardened person's mind. What you can do is hopefully make a persuasive argument with the kindness that leaves them asking more questions than they have answers. And I think that's one of the great things that Point of View does, is it causes that cognitive dissonance to be able to help individuals to figure out what does it look like to be able to follow after Jesus, whether you're thinking about it from a political space or cultural space.
We're going to announce in just a few minutes the match that we have. Of course, I just kind of let the cat out of the bag. If you go to the website, you'll see that it is a $5,000 match. But that's a good reason right now, Brad, I would say, for some of our listeners that have appreciated the 12 to 1 hour, which allowed me just a few minutes ago to talk about the Texas Professional Protection Act in Texas and things like that, talk about what's happened in the legislature and those kinds of things. But even for listeners outside of the state of Texas, to certainly say this is a time to join with you. 800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151, or pointofview.net. Since we have a match on the table, your gift of $100 becomes $200. If you join us at $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, that comes $720.
It's double. That's right. It goes to $720. So even the monthly gifts, it's especially strategic time to give because we get to count the entire year, not just 1 month.
Yes. And again, one of the things we've pointed out is you might say, well, I don't have all that money right now. That's one of the reasons why I like $1 a day. Most people say, I can probably come up with $1 a day. Can I write you a check for $360? No, but I could probably come up with $1 a day. Yeah. So, and again, we're asking for your participation. Any amount is great. We are looking for 100% participation.
That's right. We are. And the phone number to take part and be a part of the blessing for us and for this program for the future is to give us a call. 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151. You'll get straight in. It's 2 to 3 minute phone call. You do not have to have the money in hand when you make your pledge. A lot of people misunderstand that. And so it's just a matter of saying, I want to stand with you and let you know about it. 800-347-5151.
If you wonder what we're going to do when we come back, we have one, millennials like socialism until they get a job, or 3 reasons why so many millennials love socialism. And of course, we'll also talk, we have a crisis on the border, don't you think?
I think there's something going on at the border.
So we'll talk about that
and I'm
too.
not talking about the Mexican restaurant.
So we will certainly get into some of those issues, and we're privileged to have with us for the next 2 hours, right?
Oh, you've got to put up with me for the next
Dr.
2
Nick
hours.
Pitts, so that's going to be good.
We'll chain him down.
Now is the time as we go to a break. You won't miss any of the great content from Nick Pitts or anyone else around the table. So give us a call, 800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Surveys show that millennials allegedly support socialism, to which Robert Knight says,
You guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. You're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want.
Many today have been taught a totally false view of what socialism really is. They see promises of free stuff, but never stop to think, it's never worked anywhere else. Why would it work here? America needs voices who will tell millennials and everyone else the truth. America needs you to join Point of View Radio's Truth Team. And for this special week, which is running by us quickly, your gift will be doubled. We have a $5,000 match today. Every dollar you invest before midnight tonight becomes 2. You can do the math. 20 becomes 40, 50 becomes 100. Don't put it off. Visit online or call right now and help turn the tide against this dangerous ignorance. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Double your impact by midnight tonight. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here, and it is usually our Millennial Roundtable, and as a matter of fact, we do have a Millennial around the Roundtable, and that is our good friend, Dr. Nick Pitts.
Why, hello, Kerby. You could knock me out of the chair, but you could not get rid of me. Know that I'm hanging on tight.
And I am glad that you are here today, and of course, Brad is with us as well, but I thought before we get into some of this, we might just remind people of something I know you've been following on the Daily Briefing. By the way, if you want to know more about Nick Pitts, Vice President at Dallas Baptist University, and also the producer of the Daily Briefing, which is on the website right now, pointofview.net. And I would dare any of you to read, or maybe read all the way through, or find the most recent one, in which he's got a video of a person finding out he's going to be a grandfather.
Oh, is that not
and try
such
to
a
watch
good
that video without crying yourself.
My eyes were like sweating. I think there was something in the air. I don't know what was going on.
Sometimes it's just the wonderful news in the Daily Briefing. That one, the video, is just a tearjerker, and it's so fun. So anyway, that'll cause people to go check it out, right?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Let's get into the news that you and I have been following for many days. We haven't said much about it, but the whole crisis at the border. Don't take our word for it. Brandon Judd is the president of the National Border Patrol Council. He said that the influx of migrants currently flooding over our southern border represents what he says the worst crisis since the Customs and Border Patrol agents were confronted with this agency, and it was formed in 1924. Now, again, I recognize that some people might say, well, what does he know? Oh, I don't know. He spent more than 2 decades as a Border Patrol agent. That gives him some credibility. But here's another thing. The Department of Homeland Security announced that there were 100,000 apprehensions at the southern border in March. To put that in comparison, about 76,000 in February. And the biggest problem, Nick, I want to talk about that for just a minute, is when we meet people at the border, most of the facilities there were designed for single males because back in the 1990s and the early 2000s, mostly it was men crossing. Now we have families. You don't want to put kids in a prison or even a caged area or even a holding pen or whatever it might be with adults, so you have sort of the situation right now of catch and release.
You know, it's one of the most distressing things that we just want to emphasize to some of our listeners that aren't on a border state is just the reality that, like what Kerby said, 30 years ago, it was primarily men that were making their way to the border, and it wasn't at the level that it's at now. There's projections that it could be upwards of, we haven't seen this in a decade. It's 700,000 to 1 million people that customs officials could be apprehending at the border right now. So there's that piece. But these are families. And so it's almost a good thing if they get apprehended, because the human trafficking that is happening right now at the border is just so evil. And so to the extent that even CBS News ran this article 2 days ago that tried to humanize these human trafficking coyotes that are taking these children, that are taking these families and giving them false assurances and promises that they can get them across. But in reality, what they're doing is they're selling them off, and they're becoming and so here in Texas, that's something that's really hard on our heart, because we have upwards of 300,000 people that are trafficked here in Texas. And that's just, when you think about the kingdom of God, there's no people that are enslaved in the kingdom of God. And so that's just very distressing right now.
And again, we're going to talk about this over the next couple of hours, and we're also going to get into millennials and socialism, since our theme this week has been socialism.
Well, I mean, we've got to talk about this too. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, President Trump has said that if he shuts down the border, we'll run out of avocados in 3 weeks.
I knew we were going to get to
for
that.
Millennials, for our millennial listeners, please know that we will run out of avocado. There will be no avocado toast.
And no guacamole.
This is an emergency if it wasn't beforehand.
Yes. Okay, I got to interrupt for a second here, guys, because we just got word from True Team Central that we have a friend of the ministry who stepped up and said, "Hey, I want to have you help you guys out here today." $5,000 match challenge, dollar for dollar right now.
I love it.
Every dollar you give is going to be doubled up to $5,000 today. Is that awesome?
And that's a big challenge because I know what we've done over the last couple of days. So this is going to be every person on deck to help us out, right?
Yeah, and a monthly, that means that $1 a day becomes $2 a day.
Wow.
That means that a single gift of $100 becomes $200. And that $2 a day, by the way, that $1 a day is actually doubled for the entire year. So from $360 to $720, there we go. And so we can do this with all the monthly gifts. So we're asking you to go to the phones right now while there's room and time, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled right now. Let's do it.
And again, this is an opportunity for you, so please, we have some people. Nick, you can see over there, we got some people waiting for the phones to ring. So that's the first thing, 1-800-347-5151. And also, of course, you can go to the website, pointofview.net, because in just a minute I'm going to be reading from a piece that we've posted by Rich Lowry, which gets us into some of this conversation as well. But back to the issue of no guacamole. How are we going to survive?
Who knows? Who knows? If my people will humble themselves.
and the reason you bring this up is, again, you and I are in the news cycle a little more than some others. They're going to go, what? What's the avocado thing? There were people literally posting that this could be one of the devastating aspects of closing down the border, avocados. Have we lost our minds?
So this is one of the things that I think our listeners just need to be aware of. Like, there really is an emergency that's happening down at the border right now. There's thousands of people right now that are trying to make their way down. And now I know we're living in a very fake news era right now where it's really hard to find a trusted news source. But that's one of the reasons why I so appreciate what Point of View does, is it offers up a very trusted, reliable source that I can trust the information that I hear. And one of the things that I want to continue to share with you all is that there's a border situation that's happening right now. And our president is willing to go to great lengths. The lengths he's willing to go specifically to shut down the border would be very financially and economically, it would be very troublesome if he did that, to the extent that around $1.4 billion a day in goods is transported across that border. And so for our listeners, you just need to know that there is a situation that's happening down here at the border right now, and you can trust it because you heard it here.
That's right.
And again, that's why we encourage people to support Point of View. You know, we're going to, when we come back, talk a little bit more about some possible solutions. We're going to talk about socialism and, of course, millennials. But I really want to hear from those of you that tune in on a Wednesday and listen to either me or Nick or both of us talk about the Millennial Roundtable. We're going to talk a little bit about why do millennials actually support socialism, and we've got some good articles here on millennials like socialism until they get jobs, or 3 reasons why so many millennials love socialism. So we've got some great things we're going to cover, but we have a match on the table, and I want to get that done real quickly, don't you?
We do want to get it done. A lot of people misunderstand something here that's very important. We are listener-supported radio. We are a nonprofit 501c3. That means that we depend 100% on you, the listener, for our daily, day-to-day budget to do what we do. And let me tell you, I know very few, if any, other ministries besides Point of View that spend that dollar so carefully and so thoughtfully and so going before the Lord and saying, what would you have us do next? We're going to go and do a lot of that this week, and so you have a full understanding of just what Point of View is all about. But in the meantime, please go to the phones right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Every dollar's doubled.
Again, we just need to hear from you. When we come back, we'll talk about a little bit more why you should support Point of View, what we can do to address the crisis. But first of all, 800-347-5151. Perfect time to call right now. Do so.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Part heartbeat bills have been introduced in numerous state legislatures. Some have held up in committee, but others make it to a floor vote. Some even pass the legislature and may even be signed by the governor. In previous years, even those that survive are certain to be struck down by federal judges. But the political and judicial landscape may be changing. That is why David French argues that it is time for Republican legislatures to throw down the gauntlet and start passing heartbeat bills that would directly challenge Roe v. Wade. He argues that the time for incrementalism is over. Most bills passed by state legislatures have focused on the margin, banning third trimester abortions, establishing a waiting period, and mandating parental consent. He believes that incrementalism had its day, but now argues that it is time for bold action. He rightly fears that incrementalism now will merely encourage judicial caution. If your goal is to have the Supreme Court overrule Roe v. Wade, why do that if most of the bills merely nibble at the margins? You don't need to overrule this Supreme Court precedent when the latest state legislative bill on abortion merely requires an abortion doctor have admitting privileges at a local hospital. That brings us back to his broader point. He says there's a change in the cultural winds. We're on the cusp of a cultural moment. Passing bills that directly challenge the 1973 Supreme Court decision represent a statement of moral intent. The focus should no longer be on what he calls the less death approach of incrementalism, but should be replaced by bills that protect the unborn. The High Court will be forced to take note because we have some states, like New York, passing legislation expanding the right to late-term abortions, while other states pass legislation protecting the unborn. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism. Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Hi, this is Lee Strobel, author of The Case for Christ. You know, one of the best ways that we can grow in our ability to understand why we believe what we believe is to get an ongoing dose of God's truth into our lives. And one of the best ways of all to do that, Kerby Anderson does a tremendous job of giving us a regular diet of evidence, of logic, of God's truth from His Word, so that we can continue to do what 1 Peter 3:15 tells us, to always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks us to give the reason for the hope that we have, and to do it gently and with respect. So I am a huge fan of Kerby. I'm a huge fan of Point of View. I know that you probably are as well. That's why you're listening, and I hope you'll get behind them, support them, so that this ministry can continue on into the future and flourish even more next year than this year.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Good friend Lee Strobel talking about the fact that we really need to be able to give an answer for the hope that is in us. And one of the things I might just mention is we make available these booklets to those of you that join at a higher level. It's called the Century called the Liberty Club level, although you also receive these at the Century Club level. This one on archaeology, we have some on messianic prophecy, but we also have things on constitutional interpretation. One we'll be talking about today, capitalism and socialism, even campus unrest, just to mention a few. And so there are benefits to you actually supporting this ministry. And I know you don't give to get, but that's our way of saying thank you. Mm-hmm. And Brad, if nothing else, we should recognize that at every level there are thank you gifts, aren't there?
There are indeed. And again, again, at that initial level of $1 a day, we want to give you a Bible stick. This is from Faith Comes by Hearing. It's actually an MP3 player, fits in the palm of your hand, and it has the entire New Testament, word for word, ESV version loaded into it with drama, sound effects, and over 40 voices. So an incredible way to listen to God's Word, and it's portable. Again, it includes the MP3 player preloaded with the entire New Testament. So this is our thank you gift for anybody checking in at $1 a day or more. That's $30 a month. And then one more quick, we have a Century Club, $1,200 a month, and and for a total of $1,200 for the year. It's $100 a month. And what it is, it's a military version of that Bible stick. It's made to military spec. We will donate 2 of those in your name by your gift once you join the Century Club, because we're going to help those men and women who are deployed to get God's Word into their heart. That's the best protection vest they can ever get, is the Word of God. So your gift will actually release 2 of those to a man and woman overseas. Again, you can do anything you want. Just give us a call and participate, would you? 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Just picture this. Instead of $100 a month, it'll be $200 a month because of the match challenge. There you go.
Yeah. Let me just hold these up in case some of you happen to be watching on the air here, because here is the military device, and here is, of course, the Bible stick, which has a military grade. It's not a white, it's black. Right. They had to have the military say we can't have the light beeping and all those kinds of things. And so they certainly will send those to 2 individuals, but then the actual MP3 material goes to the family so
gets
they
it as
can
well.
follow along.
It's a great deal.
And we were talking about this the other day with Colonel Alan West, and he says, this is so helpful because some of those individuals deployed overseas can't even have a Bible, but here they have God's Word right there.
They sure do.
Listen to it all the time.
And again, you can release those with your gift of $100 a month or more at 800-347-5151. Would 3 of you be able to step up here in the next few minutes to do that? Please do.
We encourage you to give us a call, and we have some people standing by right now on the phone, so they're waiting for your phone call, and we have that $5,000 match, so we really need to get that taken care of early, so please take the time to call in right now, and we again encourage you to give at any level. If that was a little confusing to you, as you go to the website, pointofview.net, you can click on that button that says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger. It shows you each one of those benefits that we provide and allows you to select an amount. And we certainly hope that some of you can join in at as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. Again, 800-347-5151. Nick Pitts, let's talk about this for just a minute. The first article I've posted here, Rich Lowry, Pelosi, not AMLO, is driving the border. Who's AMLO? Well, that actually is the president of Mexico, which stands for Andrés Manuel López Obrador. But he says, the historians may look back on this era and wonder why we insisted on outsourcing our border control to a foreign country, because he says border control hasn't been tried and failed. It just hasn't been tried because of court decrees and congressional enactments. We don't permit ourselves to quickly return minors to Central American countries. We can't detain them, so we end up with this issue called catch and release. And he says this actually could be fixed in an afternoon, but Nancy Pelosi isn't going to fix them. And so we are in this bizarre situation where we're asking the president of Mexico, AMLO, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, to do what we should be doing in the first place.
Yeah, it really is. One, that we want to try to find the good part of this, and what we all know to be true is that we live in a country that is very alluring. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, and that we are the most prosperous that we have ever been. And because of that, there are a number of individuals that want to come here. And now the unfortunate part is that many of those individuals are flocking here because they're in less than desirable countries right now. But especially for our listeners that are Christians, we just have the reality that to whom much is given, much is required. And because we have just this onslaught of people that are coming here right now, it does require us to think through, one, how do we protect our homes? Just like we all have locks on our doors, we all have walls that are surrounding us. Like, how do we protect our borders to understand who are the people that are trying to get here? But then, two, how do we be good neighbors? And a part of being a good neighbor is trying to figure out why, talking with your neighbor when you have disagreements. One of the things that I was reminded of when I moved into our house is I wanted to be a really good neighbor to our, and so I wanted to go above and beyond to make sure that my neighbors felt validated, felt loved, felt respected. And that's right now, it's just so interesting because it doesn't seem as though we have very good relations with our neighbors right now. And that's not because of us. I would say that it's probably because of some of the things that they're doing right now, which is just very problematic.
Yeah, it certainly is. So again, this is one of those issues in the news, and I just wanted to bring it up for a few minutes, but I do want to spend some time somewhere along the line talking about why these millennials actually embrace socialism. And if you look at the numbers, it's pretty significant, because one survey I saw, Nick, showed that a majority, 51% of those aged 18 to 29, had positive feelings about socialism compared to capitalism. Now, you're a little bit older than that, but you can certainly relate to the fact that it's almost like the younger you are, the more likely you are to say that socialism isn't so bad after all.
Yeah, you know, what's Margaret Thatcher says, the former Prime Minister of the UK, she said, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of everybody else's money.
Right. That's a great way to put it.
But what you have, though, is that many of millennials and Gen Z that are coming out of college, most of them that are coming out of college have a tremendous amount of debt right now.
Yes.
And so the idea of sharing the wealth when they don't have any wealth is very appealing. The average person here in the U.S. has a credit card debt upwards of $16,000 right now. Many students that are graduating college from a public university are graduating with around $39,000 to $40,000 in debt right now. And we just have an underemployment rate, which again is very different from unemployment. An underemployment rate where you have individuals that aren't working jobs that match kind of some of their criteria and credential, that is just alarmingly high right now. And so because of that, you see this allure because you feel as though the system has wronged you and you are in debt to a system that you don't think you can pay off. But one of the things about socialism is it's not really a hand up, it's a hand down, keeping you down, not allowing you to be able to utilize your God-given talents and abilities to cultivate the ground by which God has placed you in. And that's what's so detrimental about socialism is it is a short-term win for some, but it's a long-term loss for everyone.
Well said. One of the reasons we make available this booklet on capitalism and socialism, even right now with my commentary, and we make it available to those of you that join at that level of the Liberty Club or higher, is because we want you to be educated. But we have a match on the table, and if nothing else, Brad, we need to hear some of our listeners to actually participate. And I'd really love to hear from individuals that appreciate what we do here on the Millennial Roundtable. So this is a great chance for them to say, I appreciate the fact that you're reaching out to the next generation, which by and large thinks socialism is better than capitalism.
Yep. You know, I think point of view is needed today more than ever before. I really believe it's an unprecedented need that is out there. We have our entire culture being talked about, being lied about. We're having people who are drifting completely away from biblical values of any kind, and we want to stand in the gap as we have in the past. We cannot do it unless we have your help. 800-347-5151. Could every single phone get occupied? 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. Every dollar doubled right now.
Surveys show that millennials allegedly support socialism, to which Robert Knight says,
You guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. You're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want.
Many today have been taught a totally false view of what socialism really is. They see promises of free stuff, but never stop to think, it's never worked anywhere else. Why would it work here? America needs voices who will tell millennials and everyone else the truth. America needs you to join Point of View Radio's Truth Team. And for this special week, which is running by us quickly, your gift will be doubled. We have a $5,000 match today. Every dollar you invest before midnight tonight becomes $2. You can do the math. 20 becomes 40, 50 becomes 100. Don't put it off. Visit online or call right now and help turn the tide against this dangerous ignorance. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Double your impact by midnight tonight. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, and we certainly need to hear from you. First of all, if you're just joining us, we've been talking about a couple of issues, and we will continue to focus on maybe why is it that millennials are so enamored with socialism. And so that'll be one of the topics we'll be talking about with Nick Pitts, and of course Brad Fisk with us as well. But we also, of course, have a match on the table, $5,000. It's a dollar-for-dollar match.
Right.
You don't have to have all the money right now. It's a pledge. But again, if you can see your way clear to join with us, we have individuals right now waiting to answer your phones. Phone call, 1-800-347-5151.
Hey, Nick, did you know that this thing expires at the end of today? I'm not sure I've mentioned that yet.
Really?
This match challenge, if it's not completely met, goes off the table.
Unreal.
Oh, we don't want to do that.
No.
We need to get the $5,000 in here and get it matched dollar for dollar for sure.
Would y'all mind if I said a little something?
Yeah.
So many times I think I talk at you all that are listening right now, and I don't really talk to you. So I just want to, we'll just call it for what it is. I just like to have a conversation with you for a second, just because we've got this $5,000 match for match guarantee that's on the table right now that ends today, and you have an opportunity to be able to contribute to Point of View. And I just want to be honest with you all, and I just want to talk to you for a second about why I think and why I also am going to be joining with giving to Point of View. I believe it to be true that we're at a very significant time in our country's history right now, from a theological standpoint and then from a cultural standpoint. From a theological standpoint, you've heard my corny jokes before, but the reality of the matter is that 52% of millennials think that the Hunger Games is in the biblical narrative. They just don't have the Word of God in their heart right now, much less the understanding of how do I apply the biblical narrative to the cultural issues of the day so that I might walk in a way that's pleasing to the Lord. That troubles me greatly, and I know it troubles you all, and especially when you consider your family members, your friends. It just is troubling right now. But it's not just from a theological standpoint, but it's also a political standpoint as well. Me and my millennial friends, 51% of us think that socialism is the answer to the questions that we're facing today. When many of you have lived through the Red Scare, you've lived through communism, you've lived through some of these looming threats that have been overseas, and you know that you've seen the effects of socialism, you've seen the effects of communism, but me and my millennial friends, we haven't seen it. And so we're thinking that that's going to be the way to move forward. But you know that's not the case. So we've got these pressing problems that are facing us right now. And so what's the solution? How do we bring about the change? Well, there's a phrase that I always go back to, and it's the reality of what Marcus Talleyrand said, that individuals can change things, but institutions cause things to survive. The Point of View is an institution that serves as a beacon in order that might help individuals better understand and channel their energies to bring about the change necessary to make his kingdom come, his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So instead of talking at you, I want to ask something from you, that you would call in 800-347-5151. That you would, we're not asking you to give money today. We're just asking you to commit with us, to join with us, to lock hands in hands like Nehemiah did thousands of years ago, so that we might build onto his kingdom and we might leave this place better today than yesterday, better tomorrow than today.
Well put. 800-347-5151. Be a part of the Truth Team. 800-347-5151.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Thank you for your program. I am a team member, and you have opened my eyes to the truth.
You have a wonderful program. I just want to thank you for being there. It's great.
I just wanted to call in and express my gratitude for the awesome work that you guys have done. I've been listening for about 6 months now, and it's just been something I can hardly miss. Thank you for giving me my daily dose of truth with a biblical worldview. I'd just like to encourage anyone listening that's inspired by Point of View to give what they can. I'm a California millennial and Christian, and I now can say I support Point of View.
Thank you. First of all, let me say I listen to y'all's show every day as much as I'm able, and I really appreciate the topics and conversation that y'all bring to the fore.
I listen to y'all's show a great deal, and I really appreciate what you guys do.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
One of those individuals, actually a millennial. We're not just asking you to support this so we can reach millennials. We're also asking some of you millennials that aren't completely in debt to your eyebrows to actually support it as well. So again, we, without hesitation, ask you to join with us, 800-347-5151. And Nick, one of the things we've also done this week is say, can you even believe this? And again, you got two old guys around the table, so we can even go back 10, 15, 20 years and say, if you'd told me even 10 years ago that we would redefine marriage or that we'd be talking about actually electing a socialist candidate, which I think is a real possibility. Remember how close the election was last time. We wouldn't have believed it. But even as a younger millennial, I'm sure there's a few things that have transpired over the last couple of years that you never saw coming.
One of the things that's always so interesting about social media right now is that everyone has a voice on social media. It seems like even the people you don't like seem to have a voice, and they continue to remind you that they have a voice by just poking and prodding you, even though they might not be aware that you're doing so. But I think one of the troubling things that we're starting to see that was just recently kind of manifested was just this weekend with Unplanned, the movie, that social media, the forces at Twitter tried to silence Unplanned from being able to advertise. And it wasn't just on social media as well. There were a number of TV channels that decided that they weren't going to allow Unplanned to be able to advertise. It's not that they're not going to talk about it. They wouldn't accept their dollars to advertise on these TV channels. And I think one of the things that's just so pressing to me is the reality that there are certain cultural forces that are at play right now that aren't trying to diminish our voice, but completely silence the conservative voice that speaks for limited government, that speaks for a free enterprise system, that speaks for religious liberty, that speaks for pro-life issues. The idea that they're trying to silence us, I never would have thought 4 years ago.
And again, first of all, you had the media blackout, which you talked about. Then the MMPA gave them an R rating, which said that if you're under a certain age, you can't watch the movie. But if you're under that certain age, you can go get an abortion.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the one that we talked about just the other day is that all of a sudden on Twitter, the Unplanned account just went dark. And it just happened when about 100,000 people were on there. So we had Alan West earlier in the week, remember, suggested, why don't we just send a Twitter comment to the Twitter CEO, Jack Dorsey. He was so overwhelmed by it that it went live again. And they said, no, it was just a mistake. But, we've had Carrie Solomon on the program, who is one of the directors, and we've had Abby Johnson on as well, who is the story it's about. And they all said, isn't that interesting? Just a flick of the switch. And, it's always amazing to me how it's always the conservative or Christian programs that get dropped. I didn't see Dumbo losing its, the movie Dumbo this week, losing its Twitter account or anybody else. Certainly not Captain Marvel or anything else. They didn't lose their account.
That's one of the things. That appeals to the reason why point of view is so essential for two aspects. One being that when stuff like this happens, you need to know about it. And what we know is that some of these media entities aren't going to be reporting on it because they're playing a part in the silencing piece.
Well said.
And so that's a key point. The second is that culture isn't going to change by individuals. It changes by institutions. Institutions that have been around for 40 plus years, like Point of View, that have credibility, that have access, and that have a honed voice that users can trust. And I think that's just one of the many reasons why I would just highly recommend, just as a millennial, I know that I haven't appreciated Point of View for a long time because I was in Tennessee. I know we've got stations in Tennessee, but I didn't listen to radio in Tennessee. And so that's just one of the ways that you can contribute to this is 800-347-5151. When
Marlon Maddox started this program, he was really trying to get information out that you couldn't get through the three mainstream programs, ABC, NBC, CBS. And then now we said, well, because there's so much information, really what people come to Point of View because they want to know what's true. But I think Nick's pointed out something else. Sometimes there is a media blackout so much that the only place you will hear it is on Point of View. We're kind of back to where we were when we started.
We are. And, this cannot continue, though, without your help, because we really cannot stand alone against these forces of culture that are forcing us to asking us to do an unbiblical view. So let's do this. 800-347-5151. We have 5 lines open right now. 800-347-5151. 5151. Every dollar you give is doubled up to $5,000. And join the Truth Team. $1 a day. That is so easy for everybody to do. Please give us a call and join the Truth Team. Remember, you're going to get the Bible stick that you cannot buy in regular stores. And we're going to invite you to please allow us to give you that thank you gift. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can always give on pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
And again, if you appreciated the impassioned plea from Nick Pitts,
yes,
which I thought was so well done, that's reason enough to make those phones ring. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. We have a lot more to cover. We will do so after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. The right to differ with popular beliefs and opinions has long been an American principle. Back in the late 1930s, the Gobitis children had a religious objection to saluting the flag. The Supreme Court upheld their expulsion in Minersville School District versus Gobitis, and that's when the harassment of America's Jehovah's Witnesses really took off. Just a few short years later, the Supreme Court revisited its decision in West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. Justice Jackson's majority opinion explained that if the Bill of Rights allows the state to compel one to salute the flag, it also permits public authorities to compel him to utter what is not in his mind. So it is with the First Liberty clients, Aaron and Melissa Klein. Can the state compel small business owners to speak a message contrary to their religious beliefs? That's a question that we hope the Supreme Court might soon answer. And we hope that answer is consistent with Justice Jackson's in Burnett when he wrote, quote, "If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein," unquote. Let's hope the Supreme Court protects America's small business owners and their First Amendment right to differ. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. Let me ask you, what if America's best attorneys from the very top law firms got together to defend religious freedom in court? That's exactly what's happening at First Liberty. And the best news? We're winning over 90% of our legal actions. Come learn more at firstliberty.org. You'll be encouraged. That's firstliberty.org.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And in the absence of resources like Point of View and the silencing of the church, I think it would in effect create the silencing of the church. And that's why, again, it is so essential that that forums like Point of View is so vital to the work of the church. And this is where listeners can be an active participant in spreading the gospel of the kingdom by supporting Point of View.
Without programs like Point of View, Ministries and Works would not have a forum that reaches the populations that need to hear the truth about the very important issues that America is founded on. So often we take what we hear for granted, the radio program or the wonderful personalities, but you know, they can only be on if people like you and me support them.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Very powerful comment because, again, we are dependent upon listeners. And I say this every once in a while, Brad, but it's worth mentioning again that sometimes as I travel around the country, I listen to when Nick Pitts is on or Penna Dexter's covering for me or something else, and I'll hear the commercials and I'm thinking, okay, you hear the local station and you hear maybe the commercials and you say, well, that's how they're supported. No, that's not at all. Or you might think, well, I listen to National Public Radio, so they get a government grant. No, that's not true either. We are dependent 100% on listener support, and that's why we need to actually come to you from time to time and ask for your financial support.
You know, guys, there's a part of me that is a little incredulous right now because I look at socialism. All I see is failure. Venezuela. I see failure in Canada in the healthcare system. I see failure in England, Great Britain, and so many other parts of the world that are living with a failed system that has already proven to be failed, yet all of a sudden it's the hot new topic here in the United States. That's absurd. Because I cannot look at my children, all full grown now and having families of their own, and my grandkids without getting really interested in what's going to happen to them. Because I'm very, very, very concerned that their freedoms are going to erode way beyond where they are now if this takes hold. We must stop it. We must say enough is enough. We must say the biblical worldview must take control of our culture, and we must reject that which has failed. We must do that, and we can do that by very tangibly helping us by supporting us. 800-347-5151. I kind of dare you to look into the eyes of your children, even get a picture out of your grandchildren. Look them in the eye and say, I did all I could to stop this evil from propagating. 800-347-5151. We still have about $4,000 left in the match.
Right. Yeah.
I don't understand why it's not all taken care of. Why people aren't running to the telephones to get this done.
Especially from a conservative standpoint. I think that's one of the differentiating factors for us between conservatives and then progressives is progressives are obviously looking to the government to be able to solve some of the problems that are facing it. And to a certain degree, the government can be a help in those instances. But from a conservative standpoint, we believe it to be true that there's these rich platoons. There's this art of association. We're community builders. We're individuals that don't look to the government. We look to our neighbors to help. And to know that Kerby, myself, Brad, we're neighbors. That when we see something that there's a problem, we look to one another and say, what can we do to bring about a solution? And I think one of the ways that we can bring about a solution is through point of view. It's like we've said, you can't trust what you hear anymore. You can't even trust that you're hearing everything anymore, like we talked about in the previous segment relative to the Unplanned movie. And so you need something, you need some entity, you need some news source, one, to tell you what the main entities aren't telling you, and then two, what are ways that we can think about this from a biblical perspective? And I think that's one of the rich things about point of view. So if you're of that mind, if you see those are two needs that can be solved, I want to tell you that Point of View is the organization that you can support, and you can do so at 800-347-5151.
That's 800-347-5151. Quick, a few thank yous. A Truth Team member joining from White House, Texas. Thank you for that. I love this. First-time listener today. First-time giver today. Thank you for your gift. And he's a pastor out of North Carolina. And thanks to another friend from Corpus Christi with several dollars per month as a pledge. Thank you for that. And then somebody from Georgia checking in at the Liberty Club level. Thank you so much at $50 a month. And so that's a few of people that are calling, but we're asking you to give us a call right now. If you care about the future, about the next generation, what kind of a world are they going to be living in? 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Point of View is a part of my daily life, and I know of no other radio program that helps its listeners to develop, articulate, and then defend a biblical worldview as successfully as yours does. For those reasons, I consider it an honor to be able to support Point of View financially, and I would encourage all of your listeners, both young and old, to prayerfully consider doing the same.
I just turned your program on, and I want to just let you know I was working in an abortion clinic when abortion first became legal, and I thought I was helping women. And the Lord showed me in a very powerful way, as he removed the veil from me, what exactly I'd been involved in. And I am proof of forgiveness. And I want to just let you know how much I appreciate just getting the truth out.
I really appreciate your program. I don't get to listen to it every day because I have to work, but it's a really a blessing to me and to all of us.
You know, my husband and I take so many extra precautions to guard our children, and it is a huge effort on the part of Christian parents to do that. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
I just appreciate all you guys do. I mean, I learned so much, and it's amazing what you teach that I say to other people, and they look at me like, where did you hear that? So I appreciate you guys. So thank you for all you do.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
And back once again. Nick, I want to come to you for just a minute before we give the number again. But again, it's 800-347-5151. But you talked about unplanned, and I thought there is a good example of how we are successful. I know some people just say, well, why should I support an organization if the country is going downhill? And they're using words even stronger than that maybe your grandmother and mother wouldn't allow us to say.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, even the unplanned story we used just a minute ago is a positive, because even with the media blackout, even with the R rating, and even with the Twitter account going down, and even when there was just all sorts of things going against them, and even Planned Parenthood putting out all sorts of misinformation, Unplanned did twice as well as people expected it to do.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about Edmund Burke again, right? The only thing necessary for evil to triumph over good is for good people to stay silent. The reality of the matter is that we come, especially from the Christian standpoint, we come from a long line of individuals that show perseverance. It was Paul that showed perseverance not just on one or two, but on 3 missionary journeys. It was Jesus that showed a certain perseverance that allowed him not only to be able to experience death, but also to be able to revel in the glory of resurrection. And that we know that perseverance is just one of those qualities to recognize the truth that we're not called to win the culture, but to be faithful to the creator of this culture. And one of the ways that they can do that is by contributing and chipping in on one of these entities that is doing such great work, which is Point of View. And you can do so at 800-347-5151. Again, that number is 800-347-5151. But if we have some millennials that are listening in right now and are wondering, okay, what do those numbers mean? Like, can you text them in? Well, here's one of the good things. You can go to the website.
Yes.
So at pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, you can go to that website, and then that's probably more comfortable for you. I know it's more comfortable for me to be able to go to that website and to be able to contribute, to put your pledge down. We'd love to have more information. We'd love to get connected with you, and we'd be so grateful for your support.
And again, if you click on that, it tells you all about the different giving levels, and just a great opportunity. So whether you go to pointofview.net or give us a call at 800-347-5151, we need to hear from you. So right now, match on the table, 800-347-5151.
Surveys show that millennials allegedly support socialism, to which Robert Knight says,
You guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. You're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want.
Many today have been taught a totally false view of what socialism really is. They see promises of free stuff, but never stop to think, it's never worked anywhere else. Why would it work here? America needs voices who will tell millennials and everyone else the truth. America needs you to join Point of View Radio's Truth Team. And for this special week, which is running by us quickly, your gift will be doubled. We have a $5,000 match today. Every dollar you invest before midnight tonight becomes $2. You can do the math. 20 becomes 40, 50 becomes 100. Don't put it off. Visit online or call right now and help turn the tide against this dangerous ignorance. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Double your impact by midnight tonight. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Back once again. If you'd like to join with us, and I hope you will, because we do need to hear from you. We have a match on the table. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. We want to provide an opportunity for you to join with us, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. This hour, I do want to talk a little bit more about why millennials are accepting socialism, and it goes back to what they read about in the classroom, some of the textbooks, what their teachers say, even coming of age during the Great Recession. Of course, Nick talked about a couple of those other issues, as well as the desire for equality, maybe the fact they haven't done the math and figured out that even just the other day, Nick, it was kind of interesting. Former President Barack Obama sat down with the House Democrats, the freshman House Democrats, and said, you know, I love big, bold ideas, but you got to look at the price tags here, you know.
Kerby, I'm going to have to stop you just because you triggered me talking about math and millennials. Math was not my strong suit right now.
So it may not be strong for some of the millennials.
So if Miss Dark is listening in Clarksville, Tennessee, feel free to not call and to turn off your radio right now.
Well, help us with the math here, because if nothing else, Brad, we do have a match on the table. You've done the math, and we recognize we still have a mountain to climb, don't we?
That's right. We have really almost $4,000 remaining in the match, a little bit less than that. And I want to say some real quick thank you blitz to Tom and Carol and Kathy, and to Sydney and to Mary and to Roseanne and to Jessica. Just a few of those who are checking in with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. Don't get left out of the blessing. And because you remember, we have this $1 a day, kind of the sweet spot of our giving here. $1 a day, that's $30 a month, $360 a year. As a thank you gift, we have got a Bible stick that we want to put in your hands. This is a small MP3 device that has the New Testament preloaded with music, sound effects, over 40 voices, and it's yours as a thank you gift. We're giving it to you as a thank you. So we would love to give a whole bunch of these away. Could we hear from many of you to do that $1 a day level? 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled up to that. And $5,000 is what we started with. Now $4,000 to go.
Let me also mention that one of the things I've been talking about, because we provide these booklets, and here's one on capitalism and socialism, our topic today, campus unrest, which is certainly one that relates to some of this, and that's available to you at that next level. So again, as you click on the website that says Socialism, Clear and Present Danger, you can see that the Liberty Club not only provides that Bible stick, and, of course, our Outlook magazine, but also these booklets. And each month, one of these lands in your mailbox, and that's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more, to pass them on to your friends. And, of course, at the Century Club level, also talking about the fact that we not only send you the Bible stick and these booklets, but we also will send 2 of these military Bible sticks to those overseas. They are provided to the people serving us and providing for our freedom overseas through the chaplains. And so that's just another resource. So consider the other levels. I know some of you might say $1 a day is all I can do, but I know some of you can say, the difference between $30 a month and $50 a month, not that much. And if that's the case, I hope you get some of those booklets, and we want to put those in your hands as well.
We do. 800-347-5151. You can do this online and understand those offers even better, the gifts, at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net. Or you can give us a call at 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled right now. Don't get left out.
What is the future going to look like? Okay, Nick, for just a minute, we recognize that the millennial percentage of voting is increasing dramatically, and I've done some calculations. The older generation, that would be your grandparents' generation, is dying off, or maybe aren't as frequently going to the polls for a lot of different reasons. The boomer generation moving into retirement, and so it's the millennial generation and Gen Z, or the iGen generation. And if they believe in socialism, is it possible we could really have a socialist president?
Yes. I mean, you look at some of the numbers. So traditionally, like what many of us can understand is that when we were younger, there's typically tends to be more liberal and progressive within our political ideologies. And so now I'm up to the extent of anywhere plus 50% relative to a younger generation. And then we just think about, okay, so then what's the makeup of these two generations specifically with millennials, and then for a certain percentage, Gen Z, and any number, it seems as though it's about 35 to 40% of the voting populace right now that is Gen Z, that is younger than the age of 37 right now, which is traditionally one of those, is an age in which people tend to be more progressive. And one of the things that we continue to see within some of the champions of progressivism right now is just the appeal of socialism right now to many, like what we articulated in the past hour. Individuals that are just heavily in debt right now and don't feel like they're getting a very fair shake within the marketplace right now. And so they're wanting a hand up. When in reality, what socialism is not a hand up; it's the Heisman. You get the hand down.
Yeah,
you get the stiff down.
You get the straight arm.
You get the stiff arm, and not only do you get the stiff arm, but it really does do detriment to who you are from the dignity standpoint as a person. Because what socialism does is it says everyone is just some cookie cutter person. When in reality, what capitalism and a free enterprise system understands is that everyone has something unique to contribute to the table in order to meet the needs, so that you might be able to achieve and experience some of this happiness that's been so characteristic of the American experiment.
How about this idea of dignity? Just a minute ago, we certainly talked about that idea of dignity. And millennials don't like to be told what to do.
Oh, no.
And what I thought was so interesting is Robert Knight said, that is hilarious, because even in my commentary I got coming out, he said the younger generation really doesn't like people telling them what to do. And I say, in a socialist economy, the leaders are constantly telling you and the economy what to do. It's like the young person I ran into one time said, my parents, they just tell me everything. I'm just so ready to get out from under them. I said, you going to college? He said, no, I'm joining the Marines. What?
Yeah.
You have no idea how many people are going to be telling you what to do. And that's kind of where we are right now. I think millennials say, oh, I want to be free. Well, you will not have a lot of freedom in a socialist economy, right?
Yeah, so previous generations saw Dirty Dancing, and they thought, yes, nobody puts baby in a corner. And so Patrick Swayze led her out of the corner, and they danced and danced. Well, today, what we continue here is nobody puts baby in a corner, and in a socialist system, they say, yes, you do. You stay in that corner. You just stay in that corner. And
I'll tell you which corner to stand in.
And then you don't get to dance either. Yeah. And so, my goodness, for the sake of baby, don't put it in a corner. We can't vote for socialist candidates.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about the other source of that, and I want to talk about some of the books, some of the teaching, and some of the things happen in the classroom.
That's a good idea.
And since 1972, when Marlon Maddox started this program, we've talked about education, and that is just another good reason to support this ministry. If you say, I'm really concerned about what's happening in the public schools, well, you should be. And we educate you about that. And we've encouraged many of you to actually homeschool your kids or consider Christian schools and things like that. So if people are looking for reasons to support Point of View, that's another one right there.
That's a great
education.
One right there.
We'll talk about that after the break.
Remember right away here, and that is that this match challenge expires. It has to be matched. To release that money to our total,
are we going
to
make it? I don't know if we're going to make it here.
Well, of course we're going to make it, because the Lord is good and our listeners are generous. 800-347-5151. I'll stand up to that any day. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We need everybody participating to clear up a $4,000 dollar for dollar match. Let's go.
Let's go.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Heartbeat bills have been introduced in numerous state legislatures. Some have held up in committee, but others make it to a floor vote. Some even pass the legislature and may even be signed by the governor. In previous years, even those that survive are certain to be struck down by federal judges. But the political and judicial landscape may be changing. That is why David French argues that it is time for Republican legislatures to throw down the gauntlet and start passing heartbeat bills that would directly challenge Roe v. Wade. He argues that the time for incrementalism is over. Most bills passed by state legislatures have focused on the margin, banning third trimester abortions, establishing a waiting period, and mandating parental consent. He believes that incrementalism had its day, but now argues that it is time for bold action. He rightly fears that incrementalism now will merely encourage judicial caution. If your goal is to have the Supreme Court overrule Roe v. Wade, why do that if most of the bills merely nibble at the margins? You don't need to overrule this Supreme Court precedent when the latest state legislative bill on abortion merely requires an abortion doctor have admitting privileges at a local hospital. That brings us back to his broader point. He says there's a change in the cultural winds. We're on the cusp of a cultural moment. Passing bills that directly challenge the 1973 Supreme Court decision represent a statement of moral intent. The focus should no longer be on what he calls the less death approach of incrementalism, but should be replaced by bills that protect the unborn. The High Court will be forced to take note because we have some states, like New York, passing legislation expanding the right to late-term abortions, while other states pass legislation protecting the unborn. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
Point of View, Truth Team 360, James Robison.
I love the fact that you are addressing the issues that actually matter and probably matter more than people have realized, and I think people are in shock right now by the fact that we didn't take these precious things that we have in liberty and freedom and the opportunity that the blessings of God have afforded us. We have not been responsible in preserving them, and we appear to be very close to losing them. And the fact that you all are committed to delivering truth that sets us free and keeps us free, I want to thank you. I thank Point of View. I thank every person who supports the incredible radio broadcast, and I hope they will continue. They will even enlarge their support, and others will join in. Thank you, Kerby, for not only your gift and your talent, but your commitment to the will and the kingdom purpose of God. God bless you, and God bless Point of View.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Once again, we need to hear from you, 1-800-347-5151. We have a match on the table, and it is going to require participation from every one of you to meet that match before the end of this hour. And, Brad, we have, if I'm looking at my clock right, less than 40 minutes.
We do. The match expires. What that means is that money goes off the table. We cannot put it in our total until it's matched dollar for dollar. That's the rules. We don't make them. That's the way the match came in. So we're asking you to please consider a very generous gift to Point of View Radio. You know, there's this one issue that just comes up as I'm looking at everything, all the paper on my desk. I'm thinking of the fact that abortion is legal up until the moment of birth. And a thought occurred to me. The way we're going right now, the trending that's going on here is I'm afraid abortion will be legal, and then they won't call it abortion anymore. They'll call it infanticide, what it really is, of killing babies because we don't want them or they're handicapped or whatever. And we cross that line. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do that. I love children, and I think God does too. I know he does. They're the gleam and the twinkle of his eye. Please, for any other reason, join for the babies, would you? 800-347-5151.
Back to this idea, Nick, of re-education. I mean, the issue of the sanctity of human life, the definition of the family. A lot of these cultural values have just been marginalized, and those of us that are a little older around the table have seen it, but even at your young age, you're seeing this as well, aren't you?
Yeah, there are a couple of issues I never would have expected that we would be dealing with at this particular time right now. One, the idea of infanticide, I think, is something that I think all of us were caught off guard by that when Governor Ralph Northam, I remember it was on Point of View when he was actually on another radio show. He had just given the radio interview, and we broke in with our normal programming on a Wednesday and shared some of the comments that he had made. And so our listeners are very familiar with just how shocked I was when all of that was happening, just because I was having to process it right here on Point of View.
Yeah.
Now, if there wasn't Point of View, what would you have seen? You would have seen a spin cycle through other media entities that largely weren't trying to tell you what was happening. With quite literally, what he said was that child would be born alive after a botched abortion, and then doctors and the mother could have a consultation where they could decide if that child lives or dies. And you just don't hear this on other, like, it is just so clear that this has been the one side that in this culture wars that we're fighting right now, the abortion issue is still something that is so stigmatized that they will not allow another voice at the table. Hence the reason why we need to build another table. And thankfully, we don't have to build one. We've got one that's 40 plus years old, and that's proved to be sturdy. So that's just one particular issue. We could go down the list with a litany of issues on this.
Well, again, who would have guessed that, redefinition of life, redefinition of marriage, the turning of values upside down. Nick, if I can for a minute, Isaiah 5, calling good evil and evil good, defining deviancy down. Just the other day, we were talking about Daniel Patrick Moynihan. We've seen some people talking about this, and they've always warned us, but those warnings have now come to fruition, haven't they?
It's a sign of, like, we've even got a name for it. It's like virtue signaling, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't even, like, you think it's just a big ploy. And I think it's one of the distressing things that we continue to hear about. It's the reality of, one, certain individuals within certain entities are willing to talk left, but they're living right. Yes. And one of the things that we can point to is that not only are we talking right, and we're going to be completely understanding and completely just biased with what we're saying, and we're going to be very explicit on that we're coming from a conservative perspective, but we're also not doing that simply because we have an agenda. Well, we do have an agenda. We've seen that leads to the fullness of life, and hence the reason why not only we're speaking passionately about it, but we're living it vigilantly as well.
Well, and again, we oftentimes recognize that, if nothing else, you do have to look at the price tags. I mentioned that just a minute ago. The price tag for Medicare for all, trillions of dollars. The price tag for the Green New Deal, even tens of trillions of dollars. I mean, you just can't make these numbers up. And it just is unbelievable that people sit there with a straight face and say, oh, I can accept that. And Warren Kelly came in here, and you've seen this as well, looking at just the remarkable difference between the 2016 election and the 2020 election, which is just next year, in terms of the fact that by that time, just given the demographics, the oldest generation, the so-called builder generation or the silent generation, their percentage of the eligible voters will be slightly less than the Gen Z, which embrace socialism like never before. And that the millennial generation will almost parallel the boomer generation, which, again, as we've talked about just a few minutes ago. So it illustrates, perhaps more than anything else, Brad, a need for education. And that is certainly what Point of View is all about.
We're looking for a breakthrough right now. We're about $3,500 against a $5,000 match that we started with. And, it's so important to hit these milestones for the week because we are listener supported. We depend on you. You said it earlier. We don't have subsidies. We don't have all this other income coming in from other sources. That's just not happening here. We are dependent on you, and that's what we want to be. We want to be dependent on you. We want this to be a work of the Lord by faith and by walking with him moment by moment. You can join the team right now. That $1 a day level is such an achievable goal for you to maybe consider here at 1-800-347-5151. Would there be 7 of you that would step up at that $1 a day level right now at 800-347-5151? Remember, every dollar's doubled, so your $360 for the year of that gift becomes $720. That's huge.
And again, one of the other things we talk about, people always say, Nick, why support Point of View? And you alluded to that just a few minutes ago, that you can trust us. But we also say, don't believe us, read about it. We post our articles. We have articles today on the border crisis. We have articles about millennials and socialism. We have all sorts of other articles. We have a link to your daily briefing, as well as just the other day, we quoted from Jim Dennison, who's going to be with us tomorrow. I quoted from him. We have those links. And then we also produce these booklets with all sorts of documentation. We have books and resources outlook, and you've written some of those articles. And so as a result, if somebody says, okay, I've got to read it for myself, we say, we want you to. We want you to check us out and see if we're right, and then go and investigate and share it with your friends.
Yeah, I think that's one of the again, it's just a differentiating factor from us, from a variety of other entities. It's the reality of, we're more than willing to entertain a conversation with you. We're more than willing to argue back and forth. We're more than willing to admit when we're wrong. We're like you. We're in this search for truth, and we've tried to do our due diligent work, and we believe it to be true that when we come on air every day from 12 to 3 here in Dallas area, it changes wherever you're listening to us, that we've done our due diligence enough to be able to be a trusted voice for you, because we know that you can't do everything that we do because you just don't have the time. You have other responsibilities. Hence the reason why we're so grateful that you're willing to partner with us in this endeavor, because in a fake news world, you're looking for a trusted source, and we are that trusted source, and we'd love to continue on, but we need your help to do it. So you got to call in 800-347-5151.
That's 800-347-5151. There's only 1 or 2 lines open right now. Thank you for those calls. If you get a busy signal, just call right back. We clear the phone calls off very quickly. You do not have to have the money in hand now when you make a pledge. The idea is to go ahead and make that pledge of support so we know we can depend on you.
And that is super encouraging to hear. And then for my millennial friends that are listening right now, that are wondering, how can I also contribute? How can I be a part of this? Well, you can go on the web at pointofview.net/team, www.pointofview.net/team. And if you want to jump on Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/pointofviewradio. Now, I don't have to host today, so I can just chat online, because I'm totally a millennial that's going to multitask, a.k.a. ignore. Unfortunately, get lost.
But you're going on Facebook, and you can give there as well.
Yeah.
And even if you go on the website, you can find the article on border crisis, when millennials like socialism until they get a job. If you like socialism, you'll love the VA. That's a great piece, which we haven't even talked about today.
Great stuff.
And if you say, well, I want Nick Pitt's daily briefing, well, just click on there, and there you go. And today's issue will give you lots of information. We need to hear from you. We're coming to a break, and this is a perfect time for you to call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
Surveys show that millennials allegedly support socialism, to which Robert Knight says,
You guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. You're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want.
Many today have been taught a totally false view of what socialism really is. They see promises of free stuff, but never stop to think, it's never worked anywhere else. Why would it work here? America needs voices who will tell millennials and everyone else the truth. America needs you to join Point of View Radio's Truth Team. And for this special week, which is running by us quickly, your gift will be doubled. We have a $5,000 match today. Every dollar you invest before midnight tonight becomes $2. You can do the math. 20 becomes 40. 50 becomes 100. Don't put it off. Visit online or call right now and help turn the tide against this dangerous ignorance. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Double your impact by midnight tonight. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, and we certainly do need to hear from you. We have a match on the table, and we want to hit the goal line. And yes. We've got some things that have to happen in the next half hour.
There's work to be done, as they say. We have a $5,000 match given to us today by a very generous donor to the ministry, and we have about a little less than 3,500 of that to go, and it has to be done at the top of the hour. If it's still any money still there and not matched at the top of the hour, does not go into our total. We can't put it in there. It has to be matched dollar for dollar for that money to move into our total. So let's not leave any of it on the table. If I left $1,000 for you, Kerby, you take it. If I said you had to do it before you left the room. So
if I left $1,000 here, Nick would take it before I
right.
get it.
That's right. 1-800-347-5151. The lines are open now. 800-347-5151. 4 lines open for you. 800-347-5151. The match is on.
The match is on,
Yes.
contra to what George Jones said, where the rate... No, never mind. Just kidding. So, okay, so previous hour, I had a conversation with you all, and so I want to have another conversation with you all again, if that's okay. Instead of talking at you, I want to talk with you and talk to you specifically, because many of you know that I'm the voice. I'm the guy that you put up with on Wednesdays to talk about millennials and a millennial perspective. And one of the interesting things that we continue to see with millennials right now is there is an inherent skepticism that they have.
Yes.
Previous generation said that 50% of Americans could trust their neighbors. That number has now dropped down to 33%. And among millennials, that number is at 19%.
19%.
There's just an inherent skepticism that they have towards their neighbors. And so what makes this so important? Well, let me tell you why it's so important. There's an inherent distrust that they have for the individuals that are surrounding them, and there's very few voices that they have that they can turn to when something significant is happening to them. And one of those voices that they seem to be turning to right now is the government, because many of them, like we've already expressed, are up to their eyeballs in debt right now, relative to college, relative to credit card. And so they're looking for a handout for some of these individuals. They're looking to hand out for some of these entities. And so how can we break in towards that demographic? How can we break in towards that age segment in order to help them understand that government isn't the solution to their problems? Well, this is what we can do. Especially as conservatives, we've always believed it to be true that these community organizations, these little lifeboats, have the propensity and the power to be able to do the necessary work so that good might be able to triumph. And Point of View is one of those places, because you know that the millennials that are surrounding you, they need good information, one, but they also need someone that they can go back and forth with, someone that can be equipped not only to hear the argument that's put forward, but also to hear the counter argument and how they might be able to respond to that. What Point of View does so well is it doesn't hide from the other side. It completely engages with the other side because we believe it to be true that the truth always wins out. And that's one of the things I love about talking with you all, is because we have a conversation with you all. I go back and forth, and I'm not afraid to be proven wrong, and I'm not afraid to be able to engage with somebody on the other ideological side, because at the end of the day, I know truth wins out. Because at Point of View, not only do we pursue after truth, but we walk with truth because we believe it to be true. We follow after the God who is the way, the truth, and the life. But we need your help to continue to walk forward. And so I want to ask you, instead of talking at you, I want to ask you to join me in supporting Point of View today. You can call in 800-347-5151. Again, 800-347-5151. 5151. And you might not have your credit card information available. You might only have 2 or 3 minutes. Well, good news. You don't need a lot of time, nor do you have to have your information available. We just need your word, because we know that that's how things get done. When individuals give their word to support good entities, great work is done. So join us in 800-347-5151.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
Point of View is actually a lifeline for me. I homeschool my girls, and I don't think I could do what I do without Point of View on a daily basis.
And in the absence of resources like Point of View and the silencing of the church, I think it would in effect create the silencing of the church. And that's why, again, it is so essential that that forums like Point of View and the work that you and Kerby are doing is so vital to the work of the church. And this is where listeners can be an active participant in spreading the gospel of the kingdom by supporting Point of View.
Without programs like Point of View, Ministries and Works would not have a forum that reaches the populations that need to hear the truth about the very important issues that America is founded on. So often we take what we hear for granted, the radio program or the wonderful personalities. But you know, they can only be on if people like you and me support them.
Point of View. Truth Team 360.
One of the individuals saying they decided to homeschool their kids because of listening to Point of View. And, of course, we've talked about that people have listened to Point of View, have decided to run for school board, for city council, for legislature, for Congress. They've gone to their school library to complain. They've started pregnancy resource centers. They've started Christian schools. Decided to stand up for religious liberty, which is something else we haven't mentioned. You know, if you value religious liberty, you don't want a socialist economy, because any control over the economic realm is by definition a control over the social cultural realm as well. So those are some really important issues that need to be put on the table. And so, as we've been mentioning, we have quite a number of people on the line, but I think we still have a phone call or two that can make its way through. So again, please give us a call right now at 800-347-5151. And I thought just for a second, a lot of people say, is it possible that the schools are part of the reason? And I thought I'd give you 4 names real quickly of individuals that wrote textbooks. And these textbooks, I think, have begun to change the whole direction towards socialism. One of those is a guy by the name of Matthew Josephson, who wrote a book called Robber Barons. Of course, he's talking about the robber barons, Cornelius Vanderbilt and Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. But, you know, he was just an amateur historian and a Marxist. And most people don't realize that. Richard Hofstadter was a longtime professor at Columbia University. Also, he joined the Young Communist League, later joined the Communist Party, but is probably best known for a book some of your kids might have read if they were in the public schools, The United States, The History of a Republic. Then you have 2 more. Ray Gringer, he actually joined the Communist Party, and he wrote a book called The Age of Excess, and perhaps he's the one that has done the greatest amount of damage is an individual by the name of Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. Matter of fact, every time I go into half-price books, I see all sorts of copies of that. He's a Marxist historian, and he has blamed almost all the problems around the world to America and to the free enterprise system. Well, if you get a heavy dose, Brad, of all of these sort of Marxist communist historians looking at it from an economic point of view, critical of the capitalist idea and promoting socialism, what kind of students do you think end up graduating from those various schools?
Well, it might be the ones that call themselves today progressives, and there's nothing progressive about anything they believe in because it's all a lie. And these guys have all pulled so many, countless, hundreds of thousands of kids away from biblical truth. And we keep going back to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand for biblical truth. All the issues you hear, we run through the sieve of the Bible. What does the Word of God have to say?
Well, and again, that's one of the reasons why we ask you to consider what you do to support this ministry, this voice, the voice for truth, biblical truth. We certainly focus on these biblical ideas from a biblical point of view. And as we've pointed out, as Nick was pointing out, I think in such an eloquent way, there are no issues off the table. As a matter of fact, there are no perspectives off the table. We're willing to have a dialogue and a discussion with you on whatever the topic might be.
Yeah, I think, again, that's one of the differentiating factors. Like, again, you're always looking for something that's new. And one of the things that's so interesting about Point of View is I can turn on the TV, I can listen to other news, and what they do is they mischaracterize the other side. Well, that's really good if all I'm doing is digesting information. But in reality, what Point of View does is it doesn't want to just give you information. It wants to arm you with that information so that you can go out into the culture and be that change. It's not simply enough for us just to feel good about knowing that our side's going to win from an intellectual standpoint. We want to equip you so that you might be able to go out and do the necessary work to make the change in society so that our children, so that our grandchildren might be able to experience the beauty of this American experiment, much like we have as well.
Wow, well put. We are in the middle of a match challenge. On the other side of the break, I'll get you an update where we're at. $3,500 to go and change. We're looking for your help. Every dollar you give right now, up to $3,500, will be matched dollar for dollar. 800-347-5151. The lines are wide open right now. 800-347-5151. A great time, Kerby, to check in at break time, isn't it?
I can see a goal line, but I just recognize that we're in the red zone, and we need to get it into the end zone, right?
Because it expires at the top of the hour.
It does.
We are coming up, so I don't want any of that money to go away. It doesn't go into our total until we give.
As you said, perfect time to call right now. You won't miss anything. Give us a call right now, 800-347-5151.
Come on.
800-347-5151.
Let's go.
Or pointofview.net.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. The right to differ with popular beliefs and opinions has long been an American principle. Back in the late 1930s, the Gobitis children had a religious objection to saluting the flag. The Supreme Court upheld their expulsion in Minersville School District versus Gobitis, and that's when the harassment of America's Jehovah's Witnesses really took off. Just a few short years later, the Supreme Court revisited its decision in West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. Justice Jackson's majority opinion explained that if the Bill of Rights allows the state to compel one to salute the flag, it also permits public authorities to compel him to utter what is not in his mind. So it is with the First Liberty clients, Aaron and Melissa Klein. Can the state compel small business owners to speak a message contrary to their religious beliefs? That's a question that we hope the Supreme Court might soon answer. And we hope that answer is consistent with Justice Jackson's in Burnett when he wrote, quote, "If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein," unquote. Let's hope the Supreme Court protects America's small business owners and their First Amendment right to differ. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. Let me ask you, what if America's best attorneys from the very top law firms got together to defend religious freedom in court? That's exactly what's happening at First Liberty. And the best news? We're winning over 90% of our legal actions. Come learn more at firstliberty.org. You'll be encouraged. That's firstliberty.org.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
It has been about 25 years since God providentially led me to Point of View when I did not even know it existed. During this time, I have shared numerous taped programs with my family and incorporated the Outlook magazine and other articles into the homeschool curriculum I used in teaching our 5 children. Back 25 years ago, I had to put a big box radio with a recorder strategically in a corner so that I could hear that message. Point of View receives no government funding, for which I am grateful. It is therefore my honor, privilege, and responsibility to support this organization of tremendous self-sacrificing people on a monthly financial basis and to put courage into them through letters and specific prayers as they have become like family to me.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
And back once again, just for a few more minutes, trying to reach the match. At the same time, of course, let me just give you a little bit of a program note. Tomorrow, we're going to have Jay Richards with us. He did a debate with a socialist at Notre Dame. Thought we might enjoy hearing from him. And somebody that Nick Pitts has worked with over the years, Jim Dennison, will join us. Penedextra will also be around the round table, so we have some of those. But in case people say, well, you're just raising a concern that wouldn't happen, the article that we've posted here called Millennials Like Socialism Until They Get the Jobs, in that first paragraph points out that a Gallup poll found that an astounding 69% of millennials said they'd be willing to vote for a socialist candidate for president, yet only a third of their parents would say that. And so, again, as you see more and more of those in the younger generation registered to vote and willing to go out and vote. This is why we need an educational process, and one of the reasons we do a Millennial Roundtable every Wednesday.
That's right, and we cannot do this without you. Again, I can't say that often enough. We are listener-supported. We want to team with you, and we want to make a difference in the next coming election. Now's the time to be planning, not when we get super close where it might not be any time to do anything about it. Now is the time. Hey, I'm just going to, for fun, I'm going to read a few communities that have donated here. Bellevue, Ohio, San Ramon, California, Rico, Colorado, Kilgore, Texas, El Paso, and another one from Texas. And we've got, let's see, we've got somebody checking in from Dover, Arkansas, another person checking in from Oakdale, California, and there's more. I can't read them all.
Yeah,
but
I saw North Carolina, Georgia, all sorts of.
All sorts of. But here's the deal. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
I just checked. We have not reached the match. So every dollar you give up to the end of the day, I was saying to the end of the hour, but it goes all evening. So if you need to check with your spouse or whatever, you can always check with us later this afternoon or evening at pointofview.net to make your gift. But call now. Won't you call right now at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
Let me just say, too, even though we're going to go off the air in about 6 minutes, you can still call afterwards. And we even, of course, sometimes have the phones open at night. And I've done that before where I've been here at night. And the first question I get is, well, first of all, I didn't expect to talk to the host. I said, well, that shows you how few people are around here. Or maybe that fits with my job description. But the first question they always ask, is the match still on? I said, yep, match still on till the end of the day.
That's right.
Which we wanted to clarify. So that's the case. And Nick, if nothing else, having me answer the phone probably makes a great deal of sense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My wife answered it yesterday.
It goes back to the characteristics of what makes point of view. Reality that we're willing to have a conversation with anyone and everyone. Usually it's around particular issues of the day and be able to go back and forth with individuals on that end. But sometimes it's us just answering the phone calls, trying to take your donations, and being able to personally say thank you for your support, because without you, we would not be able to do what we do.
Well, again, we'll see if they draft me to answer the phones at night. So far, I haven't had to do it this time because we've had a few other things going on, including Wednesday night church. But we have only a few minutes left, and so we do have an opportunity for you to join with us right now. I do see a number of people on the phone, but it looks like we still have some open lines.
We do. We have open lines.
So that's why we want to get some phone calls in right now. 800-347-5151. But let me underscore that if you can't get through, you get a busy signal for whatever reason, you're on hold or you're on, hold, and don't worry about that. Usually you go to voicemail, but most of the time we'll grab all those lines. We still, I guess they just say I have one line left. Okay, so that's good. We'll take that.
So
even if you're just on hold for a minute, just stay on hold. We'll get to you. Or even if we go off the air, we'll take those calls for a few more minutes.
800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can always go online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
We got Jay Richards on tomorrow, and you know Dr. Jay Richards, and I've enjoyed him, and I've done various speaking with him. I've been on a cruise with him one time we did with Stand to Reason, and he was doing a debate on capitalism versus socialism at Notre Dame. And it's amazing how many times, Nick, people, when they hear that, say, well, that's not a very favorable venue. And I'm thinking, this is a Catholic university, really?
Wow.
And I said, well, that just shows you what's happened in the academy, right?
Yeah, that's when it is a really interesting thing. Jonathan Haidt's done a lot of work in this space right now, especially with this heterodoxy or academy. The reality that we're just living in a world today where conservatives are really being squished out of the marketplace of ideas.
Whether it's in Catholic universities. I went to Georgetown, one of my graduate degrees there, and on one side I had Jesuit priests and Gene Kirkpatrick, who later was UN ambassador, but on the other hand I had a Marxist professor because I wanted to learn Marxism from a Marxist professor. And, of course, it's probably a whole lot worse now, isn't it?
No, it's an interesting world out there now. So it really is. There's an idea that you don't want to be discomfortable. You don't want to be triggered by certain ideas and perspectives.
Oh, man.
But, again, this is one of the beautiful things that what we do here at Point of View is, one, we make you aware of what the counter-argument is going to be. These tried and true principles that we've all known, grown up, and believed to be true and lived out the veracity of these things. Now it gives us an opportunity to, one, to help you to be able to articulate these points, two, then, to keep you informed of the things that sometimes these certain other entities aren't telling you about. And then three, how do you engage in a gracious but do so in a truthful manner. Sometimes I think when we say you've got to speak graciously, we think of being weak or not having principle. That's not the case. Like, I want to be strong. I want to be principled, but I want to have convictional kindness, is what Russell Moore says. I want to be strong to those convictions, but do so in a way that exudes kindness, because in realizing that when we're facing an enemy, sometimes the last thing we can do to be kind, but that's the greatest strength that we have in the kindness to be able to hold to conviction.
Speak the truth in love, to use a biblical phrase, or can some of the other phrases that have been used over the years. But we're down to the last minute or so. And Brad, I do certainly appreciate your participation, but what we need now are participation from some of our listeners. If you've been waiting, now is the time to call. I know we have procrastinators out there, so we got 2 lines open. And if indeed those fill up, just hold for a second. We'll get to that. And again, that number is 800-347-5151. If you find yourself saying, I'd like to read a few things you've been talking about today, because I've been quoting a little bit from Millennials, and some of the millennial articles, that's there. The border crisis is there. And, of course, the daily briefing, which I highly recommend, by this guy, Nick Fitz. It's must-reading every single day. It's all there on the website, pointofview.net. Just one more resource. You're supporting not only the daily radio program, but the resources there, the videos, the books, the booklets, and all sorts of other resources. So consider what you can do to join with us. $1 a day, $30 a month. Or I hope some of you will join with us at that liberty level to get this one on capitalism and socialism, and a new one each month. Here's one on archaeology. Here's one on constitutional interpretation. We just try to make these available to you so that we can educate you even in other ways. And that's the resource you're supporting if you call 800-347-5151.
It's incredible what Point of View does. It's not just the radio show. There is so much more in resource that we make available to you. And again, we do this in partnership with you by your gift. 800-347-5151. Write this number down, 800-347-5151. And you can always give as well.
And again, at pointofview.net, even though we're going off the air, you can still make that phone call. And, of course, 24/7, you can go to pointofview.net. I want to thank Andrew and Steve. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Point of View.
Surveys show that millennials allegedly support socialism, to which Robert Knight says,
You guys don't want anybody telling you what to do, and yet you're real soft on socialism. You're clamoring for a government that will dictate virtually every aspect of your life. Surely that's not what you want.
Many today have been taught a totally false view of what socialism really is. They see promises of free stuff, but never stop to think, it's never worked anywhere else. Why would it work here? America needs voices who will tell millennials and everyone else the truth. America needs you to join Point of View Radio's Truth Team. And for this special week, which is running by us quickly, your gift will be doubled. We have a $5,000 match today. Every dollar you invest before midnight tonight becomes $2. You can do the math. 20 becomes 40, 50 becomes 100. Don't put it off. Visit online or call right now and help turn the tide against this dangerous ignorance. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Double your impact by midnight tonight. Pointofview.net and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.